Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening. We're coming here from the UK, where it's currently 8 p.m. I have live with me Kane and Emil, and we're going to put your questions that you've been submitting. We've had well over 100 now. So if you'd like to say hello, guys, introduce yourselves.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Kane, and I'm here with Emil. We worked on POPGOES Arcade, which is a part of the POPGOES series, which is now an official sort of licensed part of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise by Scott Cawthon. We also work with a team, but we just have us two today to talk about the game we've worked on.
Thank you,
Emil?
Hello.
Emil.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Emil Mako, and I'm also a Fanverse member or developer. I have been programming POPGOES Arcade back from, I think, 2020, and now also with the premium edition.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
So I don't suppose there are many people who don't know what it is, but for those who don't, tell us about the Fanverse. What's all that about?
The Fanverse is like it's an official partnership between Scott Cawthon, who is the creator of FNAF, and a set of fan game developers to essentially officialize their projects, have them ported to consoles, released for sale on Steam in some cases, like with Arcade, and also get merch and stuff down the line. Basically, treating them as if they were official, non-canon but official spin-offs of the FNAF series.
Okay, so you're free to do a bit of modern Star Trek and start sort of bending with the storylines and stuff then.
Well, we don't have too much freedom in affecting the official FNAF sort of series or canon.
Yeah.
But we have our own sort of universes coming off of FNAF.
Cool stuff. Well, I'm going to crack on with the questions then, if you're happy to go right into that. Let me just get those up. Oh, there we go. So our first question comes from Birthday Boy Blam. If you had to change the FNAF lore, having just said that, what would be the first thing you would change?
Okay. I'll go with I'll answer this on my end, and then I guess I might have some comments too.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. So the POPGOES series and the Candies series are. They actually take place in the same universe. We call it the CPU, which is the Candies POPGOES universe, and that only takes into account the first three FNAF games. So Five Nights at Freddy's 1, 2, and 3, and then we have our sort of clumped up additions to that trilogy. For me personally, I love those first three games. I think the FNAF series is fantastic, like throughout, but those first three games really affected me and sort of made most of the impact. If I were to change anything, if I had complete control, I think what I would do is remake those first three games, and then sort of start afresh. I suppose I find like the story to be a sort of separate continuation after FNAF 3. So I like those first three. I'd probably just sort of remake those and kind of work again from there.
Yeah. And Emil?
What was the exact question again?
If you had to change the FNAF lore, what would be the first thing you would change?
Right, yeah. I would probably have more of a general, like, I suppose, through line or plan ahead for the story. I don't know if that's something Scott did much. I can see, obviously, he probably didn't in the beginning with the first game. I certainly didn't with Five Nights at Candies. But then afterwards, after like planting the seed, you start thinking ahead and plan out the story with proper tied ends, so there aren't that many loose ends by the time you introduce more new stuff. Because I feel like that's something FNAF was very good at.
Yeah.
Having a lot of loose ends with a lot of like new games and stuff.
Sure.
As for the lore itself, I'm kind of okay with where it has gone. It's more about the focus, because FNAF has shifted from one idea to the other and stuff with I don't know, paranormal stuff to fast goop to the scooping and everything. It's just it's a lot of ideas all at once. They're all cool. It's just a lack of focus, I feel, maybe.
Yeah, and I guess obviously anyone making a game, you hope for massive success. That's been enjoyed here, but you never kind of really dream it's going to happen. So sort of thinking of loose ends, it's not really your first priority early on.
no one's gonna write something the size of Lord of the Rings,
No.
which is the small game, and hoping that it'll be big. Yeah.
FNAF 1 was Scott's like last resort. It was like he was really struggling with game development, and he made FNAF 1 as like a final sort of attempt, and it had its own sort of story that you could kind of pick apart. But there's no way he was planning FNAF 3, 4, 5 in that game. So
Sure.
yeah, I suppose with hindsight, with what we know in 2022, remaking that game series or that story could probably make more sense from the beginning.
Sure. But then no one ever would have predicted what's happened. I mean, I was just at...
unless you change it a lot, yeah.
I was at the seaside the other day playing in some arcades, and, just walls of FNAF soft toys and plushies and stuff, and it was just crazy just thinking, where it's all come from. And, yeah. Cool. Well,
definitely.
Let's move on to the next question then from Black87. How do you think people will receive the game? POPGOES, that is.
Through Steam. No, I'm kidding. They'll receive it well, I think. I mean, if you like the original version, which we released on Game Joy in 2020, this is from what I can tell from my side. Obviously, I am biased, I suppose.
Yeah.
This is a perfect sort of expansion of that experience.
Okay.
It's more of it. There's new things, there's new enemies, there's new features and mechanics and stuff. If you're brand new to this game as well, perfectly fine, because the Steam release has the original version of the game too, and it's all one big massive experience. But RPGs aren't for everyone. FNAF is a horror survival series at its core, so to have something in a new genre can be strange. But if you're into RPGs and you like FNAF and the characters and the series, then yeah, I think people will love it.
Cool. Emil, anything to add?
Not in particular, no.
Okie doke. We'll go to the next question then from Dalen TV Gaming. How does it feel to be the first FNAF fan game, or in this case, Fanverse game, to be on Steam?
Yeah, it's amazing, really. It's a pretty surreal experience to click on the. You can now click on the FNAF franchise on Steam if you go on one of the FNAF games, and then you can see our game alongside FNAF 1, 2, 3, Security Breach, Help Wanted. That is insane. That is surreal to see.
Yeah.
It makes sense because we are now contributing to the FNAF series, but that is very surreal in a very good way. Yeah, it means a lot. I mean, there has been one other instance of Scott allowing a FNAF property or fan project to be on Steam.
Right.
It was a game called Fazbear Nightmare, and that happened in like 2015. He never did it again. I don't think the game ever released though. So in terms of games, fan games releasing on Steam, we'll be doing that in about a week, I think. So it's really exciting. It's great.
Cool. Emil, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I feel very similar. Obviously, because I've been working on the game, it's super weird to see that this fan game is on Steam and in the same collection as the rest of the official Freddy's games. So yeah.
Yeah, we use Steam all the time. This isn't a platform that we're not familiar with at all.
Yeah.
We are very active on Steam, and to see it appear alongside the other games that we play as well is ridiculous. It's crazy.
And have you felt sort of pressure from that, being that first big show out there? Has that really sort of driven you or given you stress? I mean, how's that affected you as developers?
I mean, I've been really excited going through each process of uploading the game, or sort of preparing the game. We originally didn't think we'd have we originally didn't think we would have access to things like achievements or trading cards or whatever, and now we have. Like, throughout this process, we've realized, oh, okay, we can actually do that, and the upload or the version of the game that's on Steam is benefiting massively from being on Steam. So the pressure of making sure that does it deserve to be on Steam? Does it deserve to be paid for? Is pretty stressful to live up to that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is also exciting. It's not you know, it's cool to show that off. You know, that we've earned that. We have worked on this game for like 2 years,
Yeah.
and why wouldn't it? You know, I don't know, but yeah, I guess it has been stressful, but also it has been rewarding.
Cool. Okay, we'll move on to the next question from Dragonify. I hope I said that right. How satisfied are you regarding the final product of POPGOES Arcade? Are there any future ideas that you still wish you could implement in it?
Right. Yeah.
That sounds like
Okay.
spoilers.
There are absolutely no future ideas. Kane.
Emil wants to be done with it. He's worked on it for ages. Perfectly reasonable.
I mean, I'm satisfied with, like, you know, the code and the implementation, especially seeing that this wasn't like coded from start to this finish like in one go. You know, there was a bit of a break where it was just POPGOES Arcade in 2020, and then we went back to the asset files and the code to expand on the like the built-in systems and add more enemies and all that stuff.
2 years later.
Yeah, exactly. Which has been difficult because, I mean, reading one's own code 2 years later is always difficult. But but otherwise, it has been also, I suppose, rewarding, especially on top of the whole officialness of, you know, the game being on Steam and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky in that in a sort of form factor with an RPG. There's no need to worry about things like balancing enemy AI, which is obviously something you would have to worry about if you're adding a new character to FNAF. You know, it's very difficult to just do that. But with an RPG, I have come up with, or not just me, but the team have come up with ideas that we just think, oh, that's really cool. We can add that because it's not going to break or affect the other parts of the game. Emil may hate me for that, but if I have an idea, sometimes I'll go, Emil, we have to add this, and it takes like a day or two. It's not a big deal. Now, thankfully, because Emil is such an amazing developer, almost all of my ideas have been added. They're in the final game. I've played them. I've seen it. It works. In terms of other things that we'd want to add, I mean, no, not really. I think we're done. POPGOES and the Machinist, which is the bonus chapter that's added to the Steam version, is a true sort of not generic, but a classic RPG ending. It's very sort of celebratory and kind of bookends the game. In terms of adding like another quote unquote DLC, because some people consider this to be a DLC, not really. I think we're done. I think we're going to be. Well, I'm going to be working straight on Evergreen, POPGOES Evergreen after this. Emil's got other stuff as well, like he's got candies. And I don't see much of a benefit in going back to this game. If anything, maybe a few years down the line we'll make a sequel, but this game is done. Definitely, we're done with it.
That's a pretty cool place to be, and obviously feature creep is one of those things that plagues any developer or development group, and sounds like you've kind of got a good handle on it there, so that's pretty cool to hear. Right.
I mean, I struggled massively with back in my previous fan games. Feature creep was a huge issue, mostly with me with how I was handling the game. With these newer games, we've cut ideas, which is something I never really did, but we have actually limited ourselves in terms of how ambitious the games get, and that means we've actually been able to release the games, which is nice.
Always good. Cool. On to our next two questions from Fee. Firstly, in your view, what is the biggest difference between this and the original, positive or negative?
Okay, so the original being the one on I think that they mean the one that released in 2020. The biggest difference, well, when you first start a game of POPGOES Arcade, like I have the menu here, I've just remembered. When you first start a game of POPGOES Arcade, the only thing you can do in the battles is attack, block, which halves incoming damage, and then use an item if you have one. If you begin the second chapter, which is the addition to Steam, you already have the upgrades that you would have had in the original at the end of the original chapter. So you're already beefed up. You got a ton of attack, ton of health, all the abilities, so you can immediately get into much more complex fighting. And then it goes even further with new items that are added to the second chapter. So in terms of differences, obviously we are just POPGOES and the Machinist, which is basically adding more to it. So the experience is already more complex. That's probably like the best difference. I don't know what I could say would be I can't think of anything that's worse than the
Yeah,
original.
you kind of
version.
hope to just be better and not worse. Yeah.
Yeah, if we found anything worse, we'd remove it, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't think of anything else. Yeah.
Emil,
Emil?
anything?
I mean, I'd say we've also polished up some of the gameplay of the base game. You know, of
Yes.
the Dead Forest story.
Yeah, I can show off some of the changes.
Yeah, which also carry over to the Machinist story.
Mhm.
For example, I think right outside the inn, we made the
Okay, you're gonna show this off. Go on.
yeah, we made it so you can walk around the benches like this, which you couldn't before. So every time you had to go inside the inn in the garden, you had to walk all the way down. Yeah,
Right.
Like
it was
this.
a little annoying, and it looked like there would be space between the inn and the table.
is.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so it's a nice little quality of life thing. For the premium
Yeah.
edition, we've also added this extra little room here. There's an extra little present and sort of a collection area where where the player can see and display all of their achievements, basically. Not Steam achievements, but their in-game like rewards and stuff.
Yeah, I mean over here on the wall, there's none here because I've started a fresh game. But on the wall, you'll have weapons of slain mini bosses. They all appear on this wall. Over on this table, you'll get trophies based on your progress. There's one for beating the Dead Forest. There's one for beating the Machinist, and also for finishing this, which is the Bestiary. It's completely empty here. It shows off all the enemies you've encountered. This is all completely brand new to the Steam version. And then if you complete the bestiary, you get another trophy over here. And then there's paints here. In fact, I'll read this out. People who've followed us on YouTube have already seen this, but I'll read it out. Thank you so much for purchasing the premium experience. So obviously this is referencing the Steam version. And also the consoles if it gets ported. As thanks, we have provided you with your very own luxury accommodation at the Forest Inns. You can rest here whenever you like. You can also decorate the place if you provide the paint, as you can see in the top left. And lastly, Menorah has given you something called the Bestiary. It's on the desk. It's a book that can be used to log your experience in the forest, more specifically, the enemies you may encounter. We hope you enjoy your stay at our inns. Good luck out there, and we hope to see you again soon. So that was written by presumably the innkeeper Menorah, or maybe Holly. And then, yeah, over here I have no paint, so it just says I can change the color of my room and my attire if I collect more paints. So this is what makes the Dead Forest, which is the original chapter, more fruitful, more sort of interactive for people who purchase the game on Steam. The gameplay is the same, like you still do the same stuff. The campaign is identical, but you get these small additions, which makes this better.
And there are more bug fixes.
Yes,
very
bug
important.
fixes are exclusive to the Steam version. We're not going to update the one on GameJot, so the Steam version is technically cleaner. The original version is still playable, obviously, but yeah, exactly.
Cool. And just on a technical note, it's a lot of people who've struggled. I've been working for Clickteam for many years, and I've used the software before I worked for them. It's been, I don't know, 2 decades now, something crazy. But a lot of people do struggle with the depth collision map, like where you're walking behind the benches and stuff on a 2.5D style thing. How did you actually tackle that then? What techniques did you use?
I mean, it was relatively simple. In the game, every cell has basically this hitbox image, right? Which is initially scaled up, or it's initially in a very small scale, and we scale it up, so it doesn't take up that much memory. It's then turned invisible. POPGOES' own hitbox is actually only at his feet, and not his entire body, which is a separate object that follows his sprite. This goes for every prop that POPGOES can walk behind, which is signs or NPCs or the fountain or the flowers. And that's what he actually collides with. Now, as to how the sprites are like sorted, because they're continually sorted so that whatever should be closer to the camera is positioned at the top of the whole image stack.
Yeah.
So that they appear in front of POPGOES. He's the only actual thing moving around usually. This was done with an object in Clickteam Fusion called the layer object,
Okay.
which can basically sort things based on the y coordinate of POPGOES or of some object, which means that if we sort all the objects or all objects of a specific type, like if they're a prop, then we can sort them so that the ones with a higher y value or y coordinate, they go further to the top.
Yeah.
And in this coordinate system, y goes from the top to the bottom, and not like in a graph where it goes upwards. So that's how it's handled, and it's only handled in the overworld, not in the battles, as you can see here.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's cool. I think that will be pretty helpful for a lot of people. Sorry, carry on with the trees.
There's also trees in each room. The bottommost trees along the south edge of the screen, they are technically a separate image that's on a layer that goes on top of everything.
Right.
So POPGOES always appears.
Behind it,
Yeah.
So a combination of sorting and layer sorting to achieve the
manual
different...
sorting and dynamic. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think a lot of people will really like that advice, and certainly the way I'd have done it. The layer object's got some great tools for that sort of stuff, and I don't think a lot of people know about that. So I think at some point in the future I'll do some live streams and talk about how to do this stuff with that object and other things as well. So yeah, thank you for that.
In general, when using the Clickteam engine, it's very good to look at the extensions and other objects you can get, because there are some really useful objects in there.
Yeah, and that one obviously works with all the platforms as well, being one of the Clickteam sort of not core but secondary core objects. So yeah, it's a good one to use.
Yeah.
Cool. So on to Fee's second question then. Have you ever visited an actual dead forest? Good question.
Well, dead forest implies the plants are actually dead. In this case, they are in our game. But I mean, to visit a dead forest, you'd need to visit like one after a forest fire or something, surely, right? Because most trees look dead, but they're actually just deciduous, right? And so I don't know if I've ever visited a dead forest. I visited forests with trees that have no leaves, of course, but that's probably as far as it goes.
Yeah.
Have you been to a forest after a fire or?
No, not that I know about. No.
No. Okay.
I know Jeff from Clickteam, one of our managers. He does a lot of diving, and remember he's dived on an old forest that's sort of become fossilized, and it's all under the water, obviously. So yeah, he actually has.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty cool.
That would be dead, yeah.
Yeah, pretty dead.
Waterlogged, yeah.
Cool. On to our next question from Grengo. How do you go around the 3D modelling process for the animatronics?
Right, okay. So technically this question is more suited for Evergreen, but there is a it's not really a spoiler now, the game's been out for 2 years, but at the end of the original chapter of POPGOES Arcade, you do get a glimpse of POPGOES the Weasel, the character, in 3D. That was, well, we have a process. I work with my girlfriend on concepts for characters, so she actually did some really good concept art of all the characters in Evergreen, which obviously they look very different from the original version from 2016.
Sure.
And we had our friend Smashing Renders, he's the modeler for the characters, and he did a great job. We were originally speaking to him through Twitter. He'd give us a preview with like a GIF or like a viewport render or something, and we'd eventually just sort of tweak it. You know, the cheeks need to be smaller, the eyes need to be bigger, and it was very responsive, very quick. And yeah, eventually he managed to nail the concept art. Or we'd have to sort of tweak sometimes away from the concept art if we felt like in 3D it didn't look as good or as suitable than it was on 2D. And yeah, it was done, and we're very happy with it. Sometimes we do go back and edit the models, because obviously this process for making Evergreen has taken a long time now. Sometimes we'll go back and go, hey, actually, maybe that looks better if we do it this way. And we have like 3 other modelers. Like even Emil is obviously a modeler. And sometimes if we need something tweaked, he'd be happy to fix it up, or someone else on the team would. And yeah, now we're at the stage where everyone's seen the main 5 animatronics for Evergreen now, and they're exactly how we imagine them. So pretty much how it goes, I guess.
Cool. Was that done in Blender or some other tool?
Oh yeah. So concept art. Sean is my girlfriend. She works in Photoshop, and the modeling process we work in Blender. Yeah. Everyone in our team works with Blender in terms of modeling stuff. We've also rendered using Eevee this time. Our old projects we've worked with Cycles and the internal rendering engine, and for this game we used Eevee. It's much faster and it looks pretty much exactly like Cycles at this point. So, but yeah, that's what we use.
Cool, thank you. On to question from James. In what ways have you had to twist or manipulate the Clickteam engine, careful now, to be able to achieve something for your games that the engine is not technically supposed to be able to do? I know I've done it myself many times, so feel free, go ahead.
I mean, the best example is probably the reflection shader, right? We can show it off here if anyone hasn't seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just admiring that. That's a pretty cool effect.
But that's pretty much just a shader, you know, that you could put in any old engine, I suppose. So it's not technically Clickteam specific. I don't know if there's been any like any big things, manipulations or whatever, with the engine that we've had to do. There's no like 3D things going on, you know. Clickteam Fusion is a 2D engine. Yeah. So
we have to make sure that anything crazy, it has to. This game still needs to work on consoles and mobiles and stuff.
Yeah.
So it still needs to be fairly optimized and nothing too adventurous.
I mean, I think a lot of people get hung up on certain things not being. Clickteam does a lot of automatic stuff. There's a lot of magic behind the scenes, and I think sometimes people wonder why XYZ doesn't have that kind of magic as well. And really, when you look at it pragmatically, if you were to sort of take that level of automation and restrict the engine with it, then it wouldn't have the flexibility. And it's not unique to just Clickteam software. You know, many other game development engines have that wide open scope. And obviously, a core language like C++ or something is completely open to everything. But yeah, it's a lot of the time I think people mistake giving the power for not having enough power, depending on their perspective. So yeah, I'm not surprised to see that question, but that was good to hear you've not had lots of stuff to sort of wrangle with there.
No, I mean, we also, I mean, with FNAF as a series, obviously, you can tell when Scott made the original game as well. The limitations that come from a 2D engine isn't, you know, always bad. You know, the limitations also feed creativity and make you produce a game that isn't as common on today's market. FNAF was unique because you couldn't move, and you couldn't move because it's in Clickteam, and moving around in that kind of game is ridiculous. Yeah. So that game obviously was the starting off point for that kind of game development in I suppose you could say mainstream games, fan games, and stuff like that. And with us, not being able to move in 3D space or being able to utilize more traditional game development tools has made the development process more sort of, I don't know, interesting is a good word, I guess. The same goes for Evergreen. Evergreen, I'd love to be able to use 3D movement for certain parts of the game, but at the same time, that means less people are going to be able to play it, like at a good frame rate or at a good graphic settings or whatever. But it also makes the game more generic in terms of, you know, modern horror games. So I don't know. I quite like. I don't program anything myself, but I like to think about how certain games would work with only what Clickteam offers, which is again not always a bad thing.
Mm. Cool. Next question is quite a long one from Kate said, can you both talk about your experience with game development / leading a team in general? How tiring does it get? What are the hurdles you encounter most often? How have your competency in these fields evolved throughout the years? I can repeat that if you didn't get any of it.
No, I got it. Did you get it, Emil?
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Okay, so I worked with Emil works for the most part by himself. So I think this question it can apply to Emil as well. And I'm not going to stop you, Emil, but I'm going to assume a lot of that's aimed at me because I worked on fan games with teams basically from the very beginning. I have to rely on other people for 3D assets, programming, and stuff like that. I'd like to think I have improved. I have, I've struggled with working with large teams like POPGOES 2, which was in 2017. It never released, but we worked on that for like a year. And that team was massive. Huge amount of people involved, like 5 modelers, 10 concept artists. It was just bloated. It was a mess. And now with Evergreen, the team is much smaller. With the power of the Fanverse, with the opportunities the Fanverse have given me, I'm much more comfortable. Also paying people involved on the team, getting more involved myself, spending more time on the games. And so we have a much smaller team, much more dedicated team who have more time to spend on the games. But I think, my first fan game, 2016, that was a long time ago, 6 years ago, and it would be a shame if I hadn't improved or hadn't learned from the experiences of the failures, because I've had to embrace the failures within the series, because there are quite a few of them. And I think the process has improved. People are also happier. That's something I'm much more comfortable with as well. There's a lot less stress. There's a lot more involvement from the people in the team and stuff like that. And Emil, obviously, you work solo for the most part, but there definitely have been struggles. So I'll let you speak on your side, and I'll see if I can beat Chica.
Good luck with beating Chica right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm used to working on my own, being the leader, being the boss and the employee at the same time. Basically, I'm kind of a jack of all trades when it comes to game development. So I've never really needed a team to work on my own things. But I feel like when working in a team, for me and for this game, I feel like there have been maybe some hitches in communication here and there. And that's probably mostly due to the fact that we operate, overseas and primarily just through this, through Discord, So if I ask a question, there could go maybe a day before I see the answer, or if I see the answer, there could go a day before I start actually working on it, because I might have other things I need to work on or whatever. It's
You might also not like the answer.
Yeah, if it tells me to implement a whole new thing that I know will break everything, then yeah. But no,
I still get it working though. You're good at that.
Yeah, after 100 bugs and a lot of testing. Like it's the same thing. Like every time you fix a bug, you cause 2 more.
Yes, yes, that's
how it is.
specialty.
Yeah. Especially when it's in like an old system from 2 years ago that you don't entirely know anymore. But yeah, but otherwise, like there's been absolutely no negative experiences or anything working in a team like this. I imagine it could have been worse had the team been 30 people or whatever.
Oh,
like you said, Kane, in 2016. But it's nice that it's just a small team where you can imagine each person having their own actual role, and there's not like an entire sub team of people doing specific things, so it's very nice in that regard.
I certainly empathize and understand a lot of that working with Clickteam. We're a little larger these days, but our core team is still under 15, and we have people, obviously myself here in the UK, Denmark, France, America, formerly Brazil, Venezuela, not Brazil. Sorry, Fernando. And yeah, it can certainly have its issues with timing and stuff with people in different time zones, and trying to have a company meeting was always an interesting one once a month. But you find ways and you work around it, and I think it helps to build the team in a way. Having a little bit of adversity to try and sort of find ways around it makes you think more and helps focus. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice.
Next question from Kronos Studios. What is it like having started out as a simple game dev wanting to make a fan game for a series you enjoyed, then later being contacted by the creator of the franchise and having your fan game being turned into an official game?
Yeah, I mean, most people, you just sort of imagine that scenario in your head and imagine how you would feel. It's that, it's pretty straightforward. It's amazing. It's incredible. It's a dream come true. The concept of the Fanverse is already extremely unique. I don't think I've really ever heard of a company, especially like a big company that people would recognize, ever doing this. So when we would have made our fan games originally as these free products made for passion and just sort of released online for free with other people to just play, or maybe if you're lucky, best case scenario, it would be played by Markiplier on YouTube. That's like a really big deal. And then that's basically it. That's the end of it. You might make another one if people really like the games, but that's the end game. And now we have the Fanverse, and that was obviously released or announced to us completely out of nowhere, just a random email in early 2020, just going, "Hey, what do you think of this idea?" And Scott is acting as if like anyone would ever turn that down. Of course, no one would, because it's an incredible opportunity.
Yeah.
Now we're kind of seeing the fruits of our labor. We have now the Steam release. We have there's merch confirmed for this year, which is absolutely amazing to hear. If I ever see a POPGOES plushie at my local Tesco, I will probably faint. I've never fainted in my life, but that's probably what will do it for me. So yeah, I mean, there's all these steps, there's these rewards at the end of it that just make it all feel like, wow, it really was worthwhile. It really was worth the time and effort, and the community feedback is already enough to keep me going. And if I hadn't had the Fanverse, I would probably still be making FNAF content. But yeah, it's an incredible it's incredible to see it happen at last.
Emil, anything to add?
Nope, that was pretty well said. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Emil and I had very similar experiences with joining the Fanverse. Like we were invited at the exact same time. We were already working with each other on a game called Chef Wanted, which was cancelled mostly because we were focusing now on the Fanverse.
Okay.
And and we've kind of worked alongside each other. So I imagine your experience really is very similar to mine, Emil. So yeah.
I certainly understand different scenario, of course, but I grew up using Amos, which Francois Liene created, and everyone in school who was a geek like me had Amos, and we all made games and stuff, and I ended up working for Francois, and the first time I met him at a Click convention, just like, wow, this is just crazy. And then they asked me to work for them as well, and it's just, it's just pretty mind-blowing when it happens.
It's a rare sort of success story among like different not just game development, but obviously people who write fan fiction are then approached by artists or the official authors to then work for official media or TV and fan films and stuff. It's best case scenario really to get added to the industry in a more official way. And the real
shame is the creativity and the expansion of all of it that Scott's embracing. So many companies, their first instinct is just shut it down, trademark, copyright violation, and don't want to know. But they miss how much richness it can add to the universe of the particular game or film or whatever it is. And it's been.
I mean, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you embrace it unless there's some sort of really old-fashioned legal loophole or whatever? If you can produce more games with these fan creators, let them make some more money. Let you make more money. Let people have an opportunity to purchase or to experience more content. Why wouldn't you? Scott just realized that one day, I guess. He just went, oh, hold on. People are actually playing thousands of fan games. These videos are getting millions of views. They're getting hundreds of thousands of downloads. Why not officialize them? Give them some merch, get some people some physical stuff in their rooms to show appreciation for these series. I guess Scott's just one of the people who figure that out. Hopefully other companies and other game developers follow suit, because it's a great idea. But we're very lucky that we're in a community where the creator is that sort of generous.
Yeah. Cool. So on to your question from Logan. Will POPGOES and The Machinist have any ties to Evergreen, or this is a bit of a stretch, FNAC 4?
Oh, wow. I mean, it's not the idea of having a FNAC reference in this game again isn't impossible because we're set in the same universe. But I think we can probably turn that down. There are no references to Candies 4 in this game, or Candies at all. There's a character which you may have seen at this point. I think I just recently encountered him, called the Corrupt Cat, which is a very slight reference to Candy with the blue fur and the red shirt. But Candies is its own sort of series, and Emil's very sort of contained in that. Evergreen maybe more references to Candies, but don't play Machinist expecting any content from Emil's side of things. In terms of Evergreen, though, it would be daft if we didn't have a little surprise or two for Evergreen. I think. I mean, if people are paying for this and people are expecting it and people have waited for a long time, we've also been fairly quiet on Evergreen, so. Play the game and maybe you'll see something, but you should obviously play the game or get the game expecting a fun RPG experience. That's first and foremost what you should be expecting, but maybe.
Cool. On to a question from Mag Freddy's. If the game does well enough, both in reviews and earnings, would you be interested in making a POPGOES Arcade DLC?
Okay, so yeah, I did touch on this earlier. I mean, I think Emil and I are sort of, once Arcade's out, again very soon, wishlist on Steam, guys. It will probably be done with. POPGOES and the Machinist is, I wouldn't say the same size as the Dead Forest, but it took us the same amount of time to work on. In terms of content, there's a lot of stuff in there. So maybe wait until you play that before you start thinking about even more stuff. I imagine if Arcade does, the only way we'd ever consider, returning to this again is if Arcade did better than Evergreen, which is just never going to happen. Evergreen's obviously it's a typical horror survival game. People are going to be much more sort of involved in that. So I would say don't expect it.
Cool. On to a question from Moo the Dog Zero. How many endings will there be to POPGOES Arcades, and will this tie into Evergreen?
There are 50 endings.
50 endings.
No.
Well, you could die to every enemy in the game and then quit the game, and that's an ending. So 50 endings.
Yeah, unlimited endings.
Yeah, basically infinite endings. You could die in each cell of the game. There are 2 endings in the original The Dead Forest. Technically, there's one ending technically, but you can affect it. You can change how it sort of concludes. There's obviously if you defeat the final boss, and then there's a secret you can do, which it itself is a kind of ending if you want, and then it can also change the 100%. Can also give you a little secret as well. In the Machinist, you can kind of expect the same kind of approach, in that you can defeat the final boss again, the new final boss, and then that's an ending. But there are also some other things you can do or collect, or to change or add to that experience. I'm not going to give any more details, but in terms of whether Evergreen's involved, again, I think it'd be very rude of us to not do a little something for Evergreen. But don't expect anything massive. You're not going to literally play Evergreen at the end of this game.
Right.
That'd be crazy. But that's probably as much as I'm comfortable to share.
Okay. Next from Segstun. Where did the inspiration for Arcade initially come from?
Well, the original 2016 version of Arcade, you played an arcade cabinet in the POPGOES Pizzeria, so the same as what's going on here, but obviously the original version. And you're playing a game called Weasel World, which, if that wasn't obvious enough, was a reference to FNAF World, which had come out maybe a few months before Arcade. And FNAF World is an RPG. It's like I don't actually remember if it's turn-based. I'm pretty sure it's like a real time. But you fought these different enemies, these kind of weird, wacky kind of corruptions of Scott's previous characters, like other things he's done, like for Chipper and Sons, I think. They were referenced a few times. But otherwise, it was mostly just an RPG where you played as Freddy and you run around and just do stuff. I think Scott just wanted to take a break from horror games. So Arcade from 2016 was a reference to that, including obviously you run around as the main character, POPGOES in our case, and you'd fight all these characters that were references to older properties. So there was a Candies reference, there was a Flumpty reference, there was a reference to Those Nights at Rachel's, which is Nixon's other series which he's worked on. Nixon's also in the Fanverse. So it's basically the inspiration for that original game was FNAF World, and then this game was inspired by that arcade game, POPGOES Arcade, but like a completely different, reimagined, bigger version of it. And there's other inspiration as well. This game has some inspiration from Undertale. There's inspiration from Inscription. I really loved Inscription that came out, I think, late 2021. You can look at the bestiary, and this in itself is slightly reminiscent of the sort of sepia-toned tarot cards that you play with in Inscription. For the most part, it's inspired by the original POPGOES Arcade from 2016 and everything that we tried to do in that game and its sequel from 2017.
And slightly following on from that, a question from Sequel to Surface. How long did it take to create the concept for POPGOES, and how long did it take to develop the story? Any advice for future developers and writers?
So POPGOES 2016 released on June 26th, 2016. But it began as like a Reddit comment. Some people were suggesting that if a FNAF 4 were to ever be made, and this was in March 2015, if a FNAF 4 were to ever be made, it would have to take place in the past, because the game has bookended at FNAF 3. There's no way Scott can do anything after FNAF 3. And so I made a comment saying, well, what if there was another pizzeria that took place after FNAF 3? And that's where POPGOES was born. And then between that and mid-2016, we worked on the game. We being me and a group of developers on Reddit. And that obviously is about a year and a half, roughly, or a year and a quarter, to get the game out. And then with a game like Arcade, this game, POPGOES Arcade 2020, we had to redesign POPGOES. We had to rewrite the story. We had to think about the map. The map is much bigger than any other arcade game as well. This is a big process. This takes a long time to nail, because we don't want to have to go back and remake it or cancel it. So yeah, with Evergreen and its story, it's a completely new take on the POPGOES story. There's still a lot of similarities, but it has, we're still changing it. Or not changing it, but new ideas are added, or sometimes we'll go back and have to think about whether something doesn't make as much sense as it did when I first thought about it, or so Evergreen and Arcade, even like now, is an evolving concept, and it doesn't really stop getting worked on, I suppose. But we've worked on it for 6 years now, so there's that, I guess.
Yeah.
In terms of tips, they also asked in terms of tips for developers or writers and stuff.
Yeah.
I have no tips for writers. I am winging this, if I'm honest with you. I'm very privileged to have other people on my team who are around my age, who are also familiar with fangame stories and FNAF in general. And I'm also very exposed to FNAF itself, the story that it's presented, the stories that it has told through its books and its games and stuff. And I always try to, write something that people are interested in hearing in the FNAF series, I guess. But I really don't have any advice on writing. I have no idea how I'd even word that. Just practice, I guess. Very generic, but practice. For developers as a whole, in terms of working on games, the one piece of advice that I've given people who rely on other people on teams, I found it I found success in speaking with people who you look up to, asking them if they're interested in your ideas, rather than making a very vague post saying, "Hey, I need help. Can anyone come and help me with writing or modeling or programming?" It's less likely to have results, generally speaking. I found a lot more success in specifically finding or contacting people I already knew. So Sian, for example, is an artist, and I spoke to her and she worked with me on the games. I found more success in that. So if you rely on other people for programming or modeling, speak to the people who you know are good at it, or that you know it in the community, or that you are a fan of, and they might be up with it. They might be up for it. I found that as like the only real advice I've been able to sort of collect while working on these games. It's not the best, it's not for everyone, but that's all I've got really.
Emmy, anything to add?
I mean, in terms of general game development, I can't say anything about like working with teams specifically. But since I also like deal with writing and also, you know, general game development, I'd say, I mean, the thing I do the most is I take inspiration from games I like. And that's in every aspect. It's in gameplay, graphics, and music, and writing as well. As for how to get better at these things in general, I'd say just resort to the internet in general. Like there's a lot of information, not just tutorials, but also like almost like essay videos on how to structure a story or how to write interesting characters or things like that. You know, there's tons of resources out there for free.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to watch an ad or two on YouTube. Who knows? But otherwise, you know, you don't have to like pay $500 for an entire book on this stuff. A book that will, you know, take you a year to read.
No.
There's a lot of resources. So inspiration and just seeking this knowledge in whatever way is possible.
I think I would add to that from my own experience for nearly 30 years of doing this. Don't be afraid to embrace the fact that rewriting is a part of development. I mean, I'm sure we've all been there where you think you're really cracking on with something and then you get to a point it's like, do you know what, I've backed myself into a corner here. My coding was sloppy, my logic's not working. I can't progress with the better ideas that I'm getting as I go along. And then not necessarily all of it, but maybe big bits or even the whole thing, rewritten it. And when you're learning, it's a good thing to acknowledge that from the start, that actually, if this is your first project, especially if you want to do something big and expansive like a fan game, that perhaps working with simpler graphics and trying out your gameplay, seeing if it's fun to play, showing it to other people, as you said, and getting their opinions on that, and then focus later on making it look really plush and, you know, going that route. That would be my biggest advice, certainly.
That's called working iteratively, where you literally make iterations. You know, you start with the small things, then you build on it and build on it and try to complete each iteration before you move on, you know?
Okay, thank you. Next from Tyler264, to both of you, what have been the biggest advantages and disadvantages with working together on each other's projects?
Biggest advantage for me is the game gets finished with Emil. Big props for Emil for that. That's basically like that's the biggest part. I mean, with Emil, I originally contacted Emil. Oh geez, what year was this? 2017.
Yeah, well, the end of 17, I think.
Okay, so I was working on an original horror game concept. I don't even know if this is public, but it's cancelled now at this point, so I'll say it, called Floodbound, and it was a sort of spiritual successor to Slender. I was working with this with Sean, and then Emil I contacted to see if he'd be up for it, and he quite liked the idea, and he wasn't too busy with anything, so he was up for, eventually when he's done with Candies 4, this was 2018, so at the time I think we were less ambitious because of the Fanverse didn't exist at that point, to work with us on this game concept. And then we had a game jam that appeared on, I think it was the Five Nights at Freddy's subreddit, about working at Freddy's. That was the theme, working at Freddy's. And we had a very small idea about a pizza making simulator, like a food sim, with mixed with an RPG, and that game ended up being Chef Wanted. And then after the Reddit game jam expired, we were like, well, we're not going to just throw this away. We'll make this into a big actual FNAF fan game, a separation from Candies and POPGOES, and just make this as its own thing. And we worked on it for ages, and it was a really big, really cool project. But it did end up getting a bit too big, and we scrapped it in favor of the other Fanverse games. But through that experience, working on Floodbound, Chef Wanted, and then we've also helped each other on the original Candies and POPGOES games. And now we have Evergreen and Arcade. And yeah, the biggest benefit is Emil and I we're very similar age. We've had a very similar experience in the community. We both have made and released fan games, and we have similar communities as well. We have a huge overlap of communities, so we have a similar way of thinking. But Emil can make stuff, and I can't. So I have a big. I owe a lot to Emil for getting stuff, for executing these ideas in such a high quality as well. Because I mean, I don't really think anyone else could do what Emil's done with Arcade. Emil, good luck thinking of anything on my end. Yeah.
Well, I feel like when you work completely solo, a lot of the time you end up not getting many perspectives, many feedback, especially when you're working on something big and secret. You can't really ask a lot of just random people for feedback on a really secret project, because then they may go out and tell a friend or something, and then everything's spoiled, But I'm thinking, already working with a close friend, I mean, I can ask them about stuff, oh, is this all right, this gameplay, or what about this idea, or blah blah blah. There's someone to shoot ideas at, I suppose. To see what sticks.
Cool.
So that's definitely been.
I guess you had that a lot with Sean and me. When we were working on Chef Wanted, we also got glimpses of Candies Remastered, which we helped a little bit on, and then Candies 4 and stuff, and we love helping you out with that. And and also
you're like some of the only people I've shown.
Exactly. Yeah. But we keep our mouth shut. So there you go. That's our biggest perk for you. We are quiet.
Yeah. Otherwise, I can always just delete the asset files that I have. So for POPGOES.
Yes, true. Yeah, that is true. Emil has that over us. Please send help. No, I'm kidding. Yeah.
So, my own sort of extension to that question: is there anything we Clickteam could do as a company in the community, or resources to help people find and form their own teams, as you have? Any advice for us?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, working with teams and stuff it's very community centric, especially online. You can't really hire people all the time. Sometimes it's a passion project. Like most fan games are made for free and they're released for free, and it's mostly just a case of finding people in forums or websites or stuff like that. I don't really know how a company like Clickteam could help in that regard. It's maybe just, I don't know.
Where did you two first meet up? I mean, how did you find each other?
Or that was probably Reddit, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that depends on what you mean by meet. I suppose we got to know about one another on Reddit through FNAF, obviously. Yes. But we never really spoke with each other until you, Kane, you reached out to me with that idea about Floodbound, I think. Yeah,
that was on Twitter, right?
Yeah, that was through Twitter DMs.
Mm-hmm. And this was late 2017. I don't even think. No, I would have definitely had Discord at this point, but I think you were struggling with Discord. You were.
I didn't have Discord until somewhere in 19, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, you were much more keen on Twitter DMs or Skype. So
Skype.
Yeah.
Wow.
Did you not have Skype? Am I wrong?
I have Skype, but I don't remember using it.
Okay, we would have to open Twitter DMs then, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, we would have encountered each other on Reddit and then contacted on websites and stuff. And now we have Discord, which is a lot more efficient. But in terms of finding people to work with, I mean, my previous games before I worked with Emil were all through not hiring, but recruiting people on Reddit. That was probably where I think most fan games in the community have probably done it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably the best place for it. Maybe, I'm not sure.
Cool. All right. Our next question is from Zenon. Is it your plan to add gamepad support to? Let me restart and put my teeth back in. Is it in your plans to add gamepad support to the Steam version down the line? It would need to be implemented for the eventual console ports anyway, so do you think that would make sense?
It's funny because when I went back to the code to update it for for the premium build and everything, I did actually think forward in regards to ports. And generally in Clickteam Fusion, when you want to receive an input, you have to make sure that you know what key it needs to be pressed and all that stuff. And you have to do that for every place you want input, right? So you might need a lot of like A presses here and there, or D presses, or forward, or whatever. And that would be, I imagined it would be tiresome to actually have to replace all of these, especially for the Clickteam guys, if they were the one porting, because they wouldn't know the code as well as us who've worked on it, So I feared they may miss like a specific key press, and for that I made an object that would handle basically all of the button inputs or potential joystick inputs to turn them into directional inputs for the WASD keys and stuff, so that there's one centralized place where the engine feeds in some input, whether it be the keyboard or from a joypad or the touchscreen or whatever. Then this object will send the inputs to wherever it is needed in the game, basically. So it would be relatively easy to implement, I imagine, as long as the engine has support for gamepads, which I believe it does.
Yes. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, we're about halfway through our time. We've answered just 19 questions, would you believe, so far. We actually have over 120 more. So we're going to carry on for another hour, if that's okay with you guys still.
Yeah, we can try and be faster with these next half.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've picked the ones that we thought would be long answers first. So, yeah, we'll go through some that might be a bit quicker.
Yeah. I'm not sure we'll ever get through 100.
No.
Yeah, we can see how fast we
Some
can.
more.
Sure.
Yeah.
Not to mention the hundreds that have been streaming past in the aggregated chat that I've got up on my feed screen here.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
thank you to everyone who's watched so far. From what I can see, we've had several thousand. We're live on Twitch, YouTube, Steam for the first time, Facebook and Twitter. So if you're enjoying the stream, we've got another hour, so please like and share it out to your friends and tag us. And with that, we'll crack on to the next one from Acme Blade. Nope, I've just asked that question myself, so I shall move on from that one. From Adrian, will there be new references to Candy's burgers and fries in POPGOES Evergreen, if you can say, and more references of the POPGOES pizzeria in Candy's 4?
Okay, interesting. I mean, I can say right now we are working on an environment in Evergreen right now. In fact, just before this stream, I got an update from Garrett, our modeler, on this room, and it's the main hall. It's the hallway where POPGOES mostly resides, and then he goes to other rooms and stuff. It's a very empty room, very flat floor, so he can move around a lot. But in that room, we have a vending machine, and that vending machine is entirely Dat Taste branded. And Dat Taste is a brand of drink that was in Candy's 2. And it's like the only product within the universe of Candies or POPGOES that is kind of like the constant. It is a constant. It's everywhere in the series, and I find it to be a very funny, just sort of inside joke. That if you see Dat Taste, it's a reference to Candies 2, and it lets you know that we do take place in the same universe. Not a big reference, not a huge deal, and it's not going to give you any lore, but it's funny to add that kind of stuff. Otherwise, it's easier to add references of Candies in the POPGOES games than it is the other way around, because Candies takes place mostly in the past. I think the latest entry in chronologically from Candies is Candies 2, which I think is in 2007.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's as late as it gets. And then the earliest POPGOES game is in 2024. So there's a big gap there, and there's no time travel in our universe, so there's almost never going to be an opportunity for POPGOES stuff to appear in the Candies games. But there is at least one other Candies thing in Evergreen. Again, nothing major, no lore, but it is kind of cool. You can look forward to that, I guess. In terms of really exploring the contained mutual universe, we have no plans for that. We don't really want to intrude on each other's stories. The whole idea of them being in the same universe is a cool opportunity in the future, perhaps, if we ever want to revisit the series or make a a canon crossover of some sort. It's possible now. Who knows if we ever want to do it, but it's possible.
Mhm.
And otherwise, it's just fun to have cross references for each other's games. And also it means you can at least use the rules from one game for another, and that can sometimes help with theory crafting. But otherwise, in terms of references and stuff, it kind of ends on the visual stuff in POPGOES games. Yeah, it's pretty much as I can say.
So, follow-up part to that question was, did the sketch or drawing of POPGOES in Candies 2 mean that POPGOES could have been in that factory?
Yeah, good. That's a good question. So
I mean, yeah, that's. I mean, I'm in the process of updating the game, and I'm not entirely sure if that drawing will still be there. But I'd say that just because the design may have been sketched on paper, it doesn't mean it has been produced yet. You know, it might have been like an unused design, which then is featured, I suppose, as a reused design in 2024 in POPGOES.
Well, that particular sketch is going to have to go because that's the old version of the
Right. Yeah. Also
But-
that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Emil added that as an Easter egg. Candies 2 has a few Easter eggs for other not games. I think the only game you referenced was POPGOES, but there's also a reference to Markiplier. There's a reference to another YouTuber called Scribblenetty. They're not canon. I don't think Mark is actually screaming through a hallway, but it was cool to see that. For me, this was the first acknowledgement really from Emil about POPGOES, and I was surprised of all games he chose to reference POPGOES was one. So that was really cool. And I did think about how that could be made canon. And like I said, Candies 2 is set in 2007, and then POPGOES canonically was designed by one guy in 2024. So I had to think about, well, I love the idea of Candies and POPGOES being in the same universe. How could that be made? How could that make sense? And if you look at one of the offices that we modeled for POPGOES 2, or POPGOES reprinted, there is actually the blueprint from Candies 2 in the office of Fritz, the creator of the POPGOES character. And it's kind of implied through that image that he may have purchased the design from Robotics, which is the company in Candies 2, and then maybe made his own version or iterated on it or designed the rest of the character or whatever. Within the new lore, that's probably not true. So the sketch from Candies 2 may need to go so that we do have more of a coherent sort of timeline. But who knows? Maybe Fritz was sort of involved with Robotics in some other sort of way, or whatever. But yeah, that's basically as much as I think we can say on that.
Interesting. Yeah. Thank you. So our next question is from one of my colleagues, Kizgiri, who I know you guys have been working with. He asks, what can Clickteam do in general to help developers?
The company or the software? I guess the software in this case.
Anything. I mean, we obviously touched a little on there earlier whether we could do anything to help people hook up and find teams, but further to that, really, new features, support from the company, anything. The floor's open.
This is a question for Emil. I'm going to continue grinding.
Well, I've personally been using the Fanverse Discord. I think that's what it says, at least it's called.
Yeah.
To ask for help sometimes in terms of certain features or why my events aren't working, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You can also ask for feedback on, I think, game ideas. I think.
Yep, it's maybe open.
Yeah, and you can ask for. You can just show your stuff, showcase whatever you've made with the Clickteam engine. Stuff like that. There's also, of course, the Clickteam forums, but I bet the Discord server is a little more. It's a little more. It's a bit quicker, I suppose, to get feedback on.
Yeah.
But then again, if it's a bigger thing, you might get like drowned by other chat messages. So in that case, I suppose the forums might be better.
We recently added 2 voice channels where you can actually stream your app or screen live, and I think that's quite a useful way for people to have more of a conversation that doesn't get flooded, because people you can hear each other talking
Yeah.
and not talk over so much. So, in addition, though, are there any new things that you think we could do to help that would make your life easier as a developer?
Maybe the documentation could be updated.
Okay, yeah.
In some areas, I suppose maybe like I remember you mentioned some before that there were a lot of things that happened like behind the scenes in Clickteam Fusion, and I suppose like if those things are known in some capacity, then it might be nice to write them down somewhere central.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, one of the big things.
I remember sometimes where I had to Google like, how does this thing occur? What happens first in this scenario? Blah blah, and then I'd have to find the answer in some obscure place on the internet. And
Sure.
it would be better to maybe read about it in the documentation or somewhere else, I guess.
Well, we're definitely working behind the scenes at the moment to unify our experience and where people find information, a single account for all of our services, and to really bring everything into focus. And I do agree the documentation needs some work, but in the ways you're saying, like one area I was going to point out was magic pairing. And if you, for example, get an object to create another object, it actually creates a link that allows selection of those two objects. So it might be a player character and then a health bar above its head. And if you just select those with events, then Clickteam, it's not perfect, but it magically knows which two you mean for each player. So there are a lot of little tweaks that I guess we've put the magic in over the years and then maybe forgotten that it's there or not really expanded on it. So we'll definitely work on that, that's for sure.
That's nice, yeah.
Okay, next from Corey. If you wanted to, would you remaster the original POPGOES game from 2016?
That person is probably not massively aware of what Evergreen is, because that is what it is. Evergreen is a reboot. It's a remastering, but it's also got it's not just a visual remaster like Candy's one.
The remake, I suppose, maybe also.
It's a remake. It's a complete reattempt from scratch. The same ideas are present. You still have to fend off POPGOES the Weasel, who is trying to print a murderous spirit thing, and then with a phone and a monitor. It's the same kind of game. It's got the same ideas, and some of the stories also the same. If you've played Arcade through to completion, you'll know that some of the story is the same. However, it is another attempt. Because it's a reboot, there is the opportunity to redesign the characters, rewrite parts of the story that haven't aged as well, or add ideas that I've never had the opportunity of adding because of cancellations and stuff like that. So Evergreen is a remake, but it's not just a remake. There's still new gameplay, new characters, new features and stuff like that. So I suggest whoever asked that question, it doesn't matter, it's not your fault, but check out the stuff we've shown off. Check out the game job page, the things we've talked about in the devlogs, or look at the rooms we've revealed, or the characters and stuff, and you'll see it's a remake of the original POPGOES, but with a lot of freedom now that we have the hindsight of 6 years behind us.
And what is your website address for anyone listening?
Well, the Game Jolt page is where they can find most of the information. I have a Twitter as well. My Twitter is POPGOES6, and the Game Jolt page you can just find by searching for POPGOES on GameJolt.com.
Sure. Cool. And next from AE Garciaf, I think. There will be merchandising. You touched on this earlier. Can you talk about what it will be?
Well, fortunately for us, I guess, because it means we can't slip up, everything we know about has now been revealed. So we don't have anything hidden. There's no secrets. The only thing that we know about, you've heard about too, and that's the U2s. There's a U2s figure, which is coming out, I imagine. I think they said it's fairly soon. I think it's before the other one. So I think it's around August, September. You're gonna have to check out U2's own official media for that.
Yeah.
But there's that. We've seen how the POPGOES and Candy U2s look. They look really good. I really love the POPGOES U2s. So that's coming soon. And then later in the year, I think, based on listings that people have found online, there's the Funko plushies. And that's, so far, there are only POPGOES and Candy plushies in the works. For U2s, there's also Ignited Freddy. And for plushies, we have POPGOES and Candy, and they, I think, will be releasing around November, December. So still this year. And that's all we've heard about. I did do a poll, or I did do like a survey, I suppose, on my Twitter about what merch people are interested in. This isn't anything I'm passing over to Scott. He didn't ask me to do this. It's just something I'm curious about. And people have asked for action figures, plushies as well was very high up. Mystery minis. Mystery minis are a very popular FNAF toy. And that would be a very cool opportunity because they come in massive waves. They're very small and there's tons of them. So because we've only got POPGOES from POPGOES and Candy from Candies, it'd be really nice to see merch of the mystery minis that showed off the other characters from the series, but not confirmed. We have no idea. And then also posters, and people also just suggested things like books and stuff. But we only have heard about U2s and plushies, and that's all that's been revealed. So there's that to look forward to this year, alongside the Steam release. So lots of stuff to spend your money on. But it supports us. It's good stuff. It's really exciting.
Cool. And a question from Bernard for both of you. Do you have any plans in the future or currently working on a game which is not linked to the FNAF universe or Fanverse?
I have like 10.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So I missed the first half. You cut out for me. Did you just? Were you just asking if people? If
basically, do you have plans for a non-linked to FNAF game, an original concept?
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll go first. I know, Emil, you probably have tons to talk about as well with this. With non-FNAF games, yes, absolutely. I come up with them all the time, but they haven't been a priority because, for me, the Fanverse is extremely important. It gives a very unique benefit in the games we produce for the Fanverse are guaranteed, or they have a lot of help in being ported, in being released on Steam and getting merch and stuff like that, which is obviously for other developers that's a pretty long-winded process, but thanks to Scott, for us it's a lot faster. So I've been prioritizing those, but once I'm absolutely run dry with POPGOES content, then yeah, I'm sure I'll work on other games. I do appreciate and focus on horror games. I think they are generally very fun and suitable for online media, like for consuming content. It's great to see people's reactions to horror stuff. But most of the games I work on aren't that scary. So it'd be fun to work on another game that is much more scary and much more free to be, less connected to FNAF and the lore and the characters that FNAF is tied to. There was the first game, Floodbound. I don't think we'll ever return to that, but that was the first example of a non-FNAF horror game that I was working on with Emil. But I've got other ideas. I won't share them here, but once we're done with FNAF, whenever that may be, 1 year, 3 years, 10 years down the line, I will probably work on non-FNAF games. Yeah.
Thank you, Emil.
And Emil, yeah.
Yeah, as I said, I have a ton of ideas, and they range from everything from half developed to just on a notepad, kind of a notes stuff. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I take inspiration from games I like and try to sort of take elements that I like and put them together. Stuff I want to see more of,
Yeah.
And it's not like I have one particular type of game genre that I play the most, really, whether it be like horror or adventure or platformer or whatever. So I have plans for all sorts of games, really. Just anything fun, interesting that I myself would want to play.
Yeah.
And that I imagine other people would love to play as well.
Sure.
There's definitely some horror games in there as well. So, yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Next question comes from Bill, and he wants to know if doing a casual playthrough and a 100% complete playthrough, how long do you estimate those would take?
Well, A average playthrough of the Dead Forest, which is the version of the game that you can already play on GameJolt, is to us through testing, through feedback, is around 3 hours. Completing it normally and 100%ing the game is not a massive difference. I imagine maybe another 20 minutes, 30 minutes between the two, because you are required to do a lot of what gives you progression in the game to finish it at all. So yeah, with POPGOES and the Machinist, which is the just the new campaign that's exclusive to Steam, I think absolutely 100%ing that, or technically it would be called 200%ing, because you actually do add another 100% to your progression, which is visible at the top here. That will probably take around 2 hours, maybe a bit more, especially if you're going for achievements on Steam. Oh yeah, I mean, actually, yeah, adding achievements on Steam, that might be up for 2.5 hours. But you could probably speedrun the Machinist in around an hour and a half, maybe. So in terms of like the campaign's length, it is shorter than the Dead Forest, definitely. But I would say the content and what you play and what you do is probably more fun. You just are doing more stuff. It's more fun to get through it. But yeah, I'd say between 1.5 hours and 2.5 hours is probably the average for the Machinist, casual and 100%.
Okay. What would be the full amount of time?
Well, if you were to play from the very beginning on the Steam version, from scratch to 200% or 200% plus all the achievements, you're looking at around 5 to 6 hours of gameplay.
Wow, that's a lot of hours.
That's a lot of hours. Thanks, Emily. Hype me up there. Which is more than most FNAF games. Just to rub it in Scott's face.
Good Games is asking, will POPGOES Arcade be released on consoles?
That's the goal. We think once we're done with Arcade on PC, and by done that isn't just when it's released, because we want the game to be out on PC for at least 2 weeks, maybe a month. Make sure that there's no bugs. Make sure it's totally stable, because we have no idea how this game will run on certain PCs. We only have a small dev team. Once we know for sure it's all settled, we will then have to work on a few additions, a few changes for potential console ports, and that will require, for example, if I go in the menu right here, you can see in the top left it says E, because you use the E key. But there is no E key on the Xbox or PlayStation, so that's going to have to change, as an example. So once that's done, once we're sorted with potential visual changes for UI or whatever, or controller support, then we will submit the game to Clickteam and see if they are up for porting it. I'm not actually sure if we are waiting for Evergreen to be finished first. I know the original idea that Scott pitched, which is, it could have changed because it's been 2.5 years, was that the Fanverse games will be released as bundles. So Arcade and Evergreen, which is all the POPGOES games there are for the reboot, would be bundled together once they're both finished, and then released as the POPGOES duology or the POPGOES collection or whatever on consoles. So I don't know whether we're waiting for Evergreen, like if that plan is still the same, or because Evergreen is likely to take a long time, whether we are releasing them individually. I don't know the answer to that, and I haven't bothered asking because we're just focusing on Arcade at the moment. But the goal is, eventually Arcade will go on consoles. That is the plan, unless something's changed. That is definitely going to happen.
You actually answered the second part of the question there, so that's good.
Okay, good.
Jet asks if you can answer, is it Grungle, returning in POPGOES and the Machinist?
Jet is grinning. Jet's one of our friends. It's an inside joke, and right. I can't believe he got away with it. The Grungle is a complete... Jet has playtested POPGOES Arcade and the Machinist, and he has made up this joke that there's a secret boss called the Grungle. It's not true. It's a completely made up word. He's gaslighting all of his friends, and he really wanted me to acknowledge it, I guess. No, there's no Grungle. Get a life. God damn it. Yeah, you can ignore that question. I've answered it. That's all. That's enough. That's enough. Can't believe it.
Now for a random one from Casper42PL. Is pineapple on pizza legal in POPGOES or Candy's universe?
Oh, good question. I mean, POPGOES is Evergreen does take place in the POPGOES pizzeria. It is a pizzeria. Candies takes place, well, the first game anyway. It takes place in a burgeria.
Yeah,
So,
there's no pizzas there, so
no
I can't,
pizzas.
yeah.
So there's no law. Hopefully, what about pineapple on burgers?
Also good.
I think that's already illegal everywhere. But,
Okay. Cool. So that is canon. I actually don't mind pineapple on pizza as long as it's not with like anything, like a Hawaiian pizza, which is
not
just
even the
ham.
pizza. Yeah.
Shut up, man. Hawaiian pizza just being ham and pineapple, I think is quite nice. I don't mind that. I wouldn't if I had control of this and if there was any confirmation anywhere in POPGOES whether this was illegal or not, I would make it legal. I think it's perfectly valid.
Good call.
You agree?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love pineapple on everything. It's great.
Okay. Right,
Well,
good.
maybe not like, I don't know, beef or something. That would be a bit random, but... Ozzy asks, if you're into Pokemon, what is your favourite shiny Pokemon? And if not, just in case, what is your favourite FNAF animatronic and why?
Okay.
Ooh.
I can answer both. As in I can answer both parts. I have played Pokemon games and I know a fair bit about Pokemon and I'll probably be able to name like most of them, but shiny Pokemon, most shinies in Pokemon just aren't that good. Like from like generation like 3 to 6, they're just most of them are green or pink and it's just not very nice. I think Mega Charizard X, I think he's really cool with the shiny. I think he's black with blue flames, really cool. He's not my favorite Pokemon, but I think he's got a nice shiny color scheme. Emil, do you have your side of this question?
Oh, definitely. I've only ever played Pokemon Go. So, I mean, I guess Pikachu.
Isn't shiny Pikachu just like slightly orange?
Oh yeah, shiny? I don't know, probably.
Oh, but if you had to pick any Pokemon, you'd pick Pikachu.
Yeah,
okay.
I can't remember any of the other ones, so I haven't played. Yeah,
super
I don't
fan.
play Pokemon.
Wow.
Yeah.
And your favourite animatronic characters?
Yeah. I am probably going to pick Toy Bonnie or Shadow Bonnie. They're basically the same. I just like him. I think he's a cool design. He's not very scary, but maybe I like him because he's like underrated. But yeah, he's cool. He's also a huge influence on the POPGOES story. So I'd pick Toy Bonnie. Emil?
It's a tough one. I'm never really good at picking favorites in general, but I suppose FNAF 1 Bonnie, specifically.
He's scary.
Yeah.
Really
He's actually the one that can be both like scary in certain like lighting situations and whatnot, but also seem completely harmless and not scary in the right lighting, It's not like Nightmare animatronics where, you can tell they're supposed to be scary even if they're in daylight lighting or whatever.
Yeah.
Bonnie can look completely just friendly and innocent and also horribly terrifying.
That's true.
Okay, so next question from Sir Oscar, but also we've had quite a few people asking, will there be translations? In particular, he asks into Latin Spanish, but are you planning to do translations of the game?
With Arcade, almost definitely not. Unfortunately, translations for this game are nigh impossible. I'll give one example. Right now I'm in a battle, if you see my screen, and I have the buttons on the left, attack, block, items. Not only does Arcade have a really unique, well, not unique, I suppose, but very strict art style, in that every single pixel is actually 2 pixels wide. If you look at the game, every single sprite has this sort of stretched rule in its sprites. And I can't, for example, make attack here narrower. If I needed to have a word here from another language that was 7 or 8 letters long, it simply wouldn't fit. I mean, again, I can't squash it because this is as narrow as the letter T could be on our font, basically. So with translations, not only would there be all these buttons, all these UI elements, but also dialogue would need to be cut down probably massively in certain languages. Like I think German is typically very they have very long words, and yeah, I mean character names, HP numbers, or numbers wouldn't change, but UI elements, I mean, almost impossible. Thankfully, everything that ever happens in this game is controlled by you. As in, I'm gonna stay on this screen until I press a button or until I win the battle. So if you are if you speak in another language, you could, if you want, although it isn't massively convenient, you could take a screenshot or take a picture with your camera, and Google Translate will often be able to pick up the words and then translate them for you. So if you're desperate to play in another language, there is that option. Or again, you could just like speak to someone, like have a voiced call with someone who can translate it with you. So that's really as good as it gets for a game like this. We've had ideas. We really have tried. We've thought about like I think you can see my cursor. Maybe I'm not sure. We had an idea that if you hovered over a certain word at the bottom of the screen, it would tell you what it means in your language. But again, we thought that's actually way too complicated. It's basically impossible. But for Evergreen is heavily dialogue based in like vocals or not vocals, speech. Yeah. You'll hear people talk in that game a lot, like Phone Guy. And then we will have subtitles for that game. That is planned in English. And then those subtitles can probably be swapped out for other languages. That's much easier. Much easier. With this game, almost impossible. With Evergreen, translations are more likely. It's not confirmed, it's not promised, but that is more likely.
Cool. Next, combination of questions from Vinny and Villian, I think. What was by far the most difficult thing, and also what was the most fun part of the development?
For me, most of implementing ideas is just a case of producing the assets needed. So I made basically almost all of the 2D assets here. So all of these sprites and stuff. 3D stuff is handled by someone else, although I think it was already made because it was already made for Evergreen. So for me, if I want to implement something like a new character or a enemy or whatever, I'll make the assets in 2D. I'll often need some help from one of our designers like Ellie or Sean, and then give it to Emil. And that's basically the end of it. There really isn't that much of a variety and difficulty for me. But for Emil, I'm assuming that's a different story.
Well, I mean, I think overall, I'd say the most difficult part has probably been implementing the final boss in the Machinist story.
Damn, that was risky to talk about this, but yeah. Be careful, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to name anything specific, but for example, when you see Kane here playing the game, you can see that there are these battle elements or battle sequences, which are, from a code standpoint, pretty much identical each time. The only thing that varies is the stats. Yeah. And then some cosmetic things like the name tag of the enemy, the sprite of the enemy, the background, stuff like that. But otherwise, it's the same system each time. It's the same game, same rules. However, similar to Dead King Freddy, the final boss of the Dead Forest, there are some special exceptions here and there sometimes for certain battles wherein the rules are broken. And coding these kinds of things as exceptions without damaging the code that handles everything else, all the default battles, that's always kind of tough to do. Yeah.
Good answer, Emil. Good answer.
I had my finger on the mute button there, don't worry.
I trust Emil.
So, Omgriart asked, if we have POPGOES Arcade 100% completion on Game Jolt, will there be any way to port that over to the Steam version, or will it be start from scratch?
It will be completely compatible with the Steam version. That's at least supposed to be the case.
Yes.
It won't be as possible, if at all, for consoles or other devices. But if you've played the original legacy build of Arcade on a certain PC, then your save file exists somewhere in a folder somewhere. And that save file would be the same one that'll be used for the Steam version.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've recently added some sort of forgiveness, I guess is the word, I think, in this sort
forgiveness / conversion kind of thing.
Well, you can talk about it, actually. I'll continue.
Yeah. I think we showed the bestiary before.
Yeah, it is.
Obviously, in the beginning of the game, you haven't discovered any enemies or anything, so the page is all blank. But if you go into the Steam build, or the Steam version of the game, having already completed 100% of the Dead Forest, you should have realistically encountered pretty much every enemy there is to encounter, right? Every boss and everything. But the game won't know this because you haven't played it on the Steam version of the game, and therefore the
was never
bestiary would be
counting.
empty.
Yeah.
It was never counting all these things and logging them in the save file. But through logic, as humans, we can say, okay, you've beaten the game. That means you must have encountered Corrupt Chica, for example, or all the other bosses, because that's required to beat the game. So therefore, at the beginning, when the game boots up, the Steam version boots up, some code is run to check if the save file has certain data fields blank, the fields that are supposed to count what enemies you've encountered. And that's how it knows that this save file actually comes from the old version from GameJolt. Therefore, it will then account for this and check your progress in the Dead Forest, and then basically enable all of these pages that you would have otherwise missed, I guess, so that you're kind of up to speed wherever you are in the game.
Yeah, so if you have a legacy save from the GameJolt build where you've beaten, say, Corrupt Foxy, which is the second mini boss, then the bestiary should give you in the Steam version Corrupt Foxy and Corrupt Chica, which are the two mini bosses you would have had to have beaten, and then also the respective common enemies within those areas. So, well, I'm not going to list them out, but you get the idea. Yeah. But it should keep everyone else locked, and it also is never going to give you any of the gilded characters, which are ultra rare. That is never assumed.
Right.
It's rare for you to have ever encountered those, so you can never get those to the legacy builds, even if you did encounter them.
And we have an anonymous question. Do you know whether this will work on Steam Decks?
Yeah, I think it is. We had someone actually play the GameJolt version on Steam Deck by modifying their deck, I guess, or just downloading it. And it ran. The only thing that didn't work was a video file at the beginning of the game, and I guess anywhere in the game. It played the audio because for us, we actually did input the audio and video files separately into the game. So it plays the audio files, but the video files don't work. So we'll either have to take a look at that or hope that maybe Steam Deck updates to allow those video files. I think we use FMV video files, so I guess that's not compatible on Steam Deck. So maybe in a few months that they'll change that. But otherwise, the game runs flawlessly. It works really well. So that's the original version. I don't see why this new version would be any different, especially since this is actually on Steam. So
cool. Arthur asks, is there a plan to make a book with concept art or behind the scenes video or information for POPGOES Arcade and The Machinist after you've released?
Good question. I don't know if there's enough. Well, okay. With the original version of POPGOES from 2016 and the sequels that we attempted and stuff, there's tons and tons of behind the scenes content that we could show off. And to be honest, we have shown off almost all of it. For it to go in a book would be really cool because there is enough content to put in a book. However, we don't actually have the rights to all that content anymore because they were made by a team that hadn't signed papers, because back then there was no Fanverse and there was no expectation that these games would ever be sold. Everyone on the new Evergreen team and the Arcade team have signed everything, so we can use anything from that. But I don't think there's enough. Evergreen's development process has been a lot cleaner. There's very little scrapped or behind the scenes content that isn't actually in the game itself. For anything that's drastically really cool or really interesting, whatever, we'll probably put into Evergreen itself through the extras menu or something that you can unlock. But in terms of a book, I don't know. I don't think there's enough. It's a cool idea, but maybe not for Evergreen. Maybe for Candies. Candies probably has a lot.
Okay. Expo Dev asks, will the reflection shader ever be released for people to use? And briefly, are there any technical details about how it works that you could talk about?
I'm not entirely sure it'll be released, because it might be because it's not just up to the shader itself to create reflections. You need to do some additional things to implement it properly in whatever game you're making. But I can reveal that how it works is it's basically done by sampling pixels in the area outside the actual like game screen, you know, the ones on the arcade cabinet. And then it samples on an image that was rendered with reflections of some color map on the screen area. And these colors were then used to tell, okay, if I sample a pixel on the pause button, where did this pixel actually come from on the screen? Basically, what coordinate was it? And then we know what color to find at that coordinate on the actual live gameplay screen. So most of it is white right now because we're in the snow forest. And then we know to make that pixel at the button a little more brighter. Then you can amplify like how bright the reflections are supposed to be. They're not super bright here because they shouldn't be distracting. But that's basically how it works. So we use color channels in such a way that the red channel would be pretty much black on the left side of this reflection image that we use to make the arcade render from, and then as it goes to the right, it becomes more and more red up to the value of 255. The same goes for the Y coordinate, which we get from the green channel. Additionally, we also have the blue channel, which accounts for the overall brightness of the reflection, so that we get ambient occlusion where the reflections don't hit that much and we retain lighting and stuff like that. So yeah.
And it looks
it's a little,
like you've got
complicated, but
like a warping effect at the sides there going on as well.
Yeah, that's due to it's part due to the fact that the cabinet isn't like completely like edged.
Flat.
You know, that it's completely like there's some rounding on the edges here and there.
Yeah, that is actually present on the Blender render. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's also due to the fact that somewhere along the lines, if these colors that are reflected from the UV map or whatever, the texture coordinate map, onto the model of the arcade cabinet, if those colors ever shift, not in brightness but in just color, then the resulting coordinate will also shift slightly, which means that stuff will begin to curve in a certain direction or something because the coordinate that we're sampling from is changing slightly. And that's actually something we had to fight a bit with. I think I added into the shader some slight like blurriness to it,
Yeah,
so
like a
that it would.
denoiser.
Yeah, exactly. Because it was also a bit noisy here and there with how accurate it would get these reflections. But yeah, overall, I think it works nicely for this.
It's an awesome effect. I mean, I've just been admiring it
Yeah,
while
I
we're
really
doing the
like it.
stream.
It's also, I think initially we also played around with just the possibility of not using it for reflections, but more using it for displaying content on warped surfaces. Because
it's totally possible because obviously our game is a rectangle, and it's flat and it's perfectly perpendicular with the player, or parallel, I guess. But obviously, if we wanted it to be on a like a
curved
CRT
screen,
exactly,
sure.
we could.
Yeah, if it's viewed at an angle in a room, instead of just head on. It could also be like on a curvy wave display or whatever. It could be anything, really.
Cool, thank you. Christopher asks, do you have plans to bring this to cell phones?
Well, mobile is slightly harder than console, and obviously we'd have to either come to terms with the fact that achievements won't work on mobile, or we'd have to program its own achievement menu, which I don't think we'd really like to do, but if there's a massive demand, maybe. However, a mobile version, it probably is, the screens of a mobile phone are probably too small to have this big exterior arcade cabinet. So what it probably do is have this by default, and then have some kind of a virtual controller in the top, in the corners. It is planned. Mobile is, like all Fanverse games, mobile is one of the planned ported platforms. I don't know how long that'll take. I don't know whether it's a priority for now or after consoles or whatever. But it is something we are thinking about, yeah.
Cool. And where should we go? Were there any things that got cut from previous games that you've brought into this one?
The one this is a question we get sometimes, and the one concept that I use is Menorah. Menorah the mouse was a character that we introduced to POPGOES 2 as like this abandoned, scrapped animatronic that was never meant to like exist, basically. And she exists now in the Evergreen and Arcade games as basically a friend of the POPGOES gang. She's not an animatronic in Evergreen, so she's not an enemy, but she exists in this game as an NPC. She's an innkeeper, and she's actually kidnapped in POPGOES and the Machinist. And so your goal is basically to find her. And so she's had a bit of a redemption arc from POPGOES 2 to this game. She's like her own character. She's not abandoned or scrapped or anything like that. She's actually a very important part of the POPGOES like cartoony universe. There's also the epitome animatronics from POPGOES 2, which were these giant skeleton characters, are kind of referenced in this game through of course, the game is called The Dead Forest, which was the subtitle of POPGOES 2, and they're referenced in this game through the dead enemies, which I'm actually fighting right now. So that's pretty much the extent of it, though. To be honest with you, we don't really. Well, I haven't been massively keen on retreading old ideas that ultimately didn't work very well. But I do appreciate that people really liked Menorah and the epitome characters, so they're kind of referenced a bit in this game. But otherwise, that's basically it, I think.
On the subject of Menorah, Sir Oscar asks, what breed of mouse is it based on?
Menorah is a field mouse.
Field mouse.
So every character in the game, they are actually based on specific species of each character. So POPGOES is a weasel. He's a least weasel. Blake is a European badger, which is why he doesn't look anything like an American badger. Sarah is a grey squirrel, even though she's kind of like blonde in color. Saffron is a red squirrel. And Stone the crow, in the original game, he was a carrion crow, which is a crow that is actually common in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
But in this game, to make his design more interesting, he's actually based on a hooded crow, which is not a species found in the UK. I've actually broken my rule there in having UK animals. Hooded crows are actually in Australia, and I think maybe South Africa, some other countries. But yeah, and Menorah is a field mouse, basically the most generic mouse ever. It's just a mouse.
Fair enough. Tyrex90 asks, will the infamous POPGOES character Morse the Mole appear in the new POPGOES Arcade?
Morse the Mole, Simon, I know you're not massively familiar with this character, I guess at all.
Yeah.
He is a character that was in the first ever draft of POPGOES that I made in Paint in 2015. He is a very strange looking character, and he was scrapped immediately.
Right.
Go on.
I was just commenting. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, he was scrapped instantly and replaced by Blake and Stone. Blake the Badger, Stone the Crow. And he's mentioned in the extras screen of the original POPGOES game as being like this kind of character that I hate the mention of because he was like this embarrassing, weird character. I don't mind the guy. You know, he's a fun character. He's got a very basic design, but he's funny, and people like to take the mickey out of him. And people also like to take the mickey out of me by bringing him up. I'm not offended by Morse. He's fine, but he's not in Arcade. He is. I don't have any intentions of bringing him back in any way. But I love seeing fan art and stuff like that. He is referenced very very vaguely in Evergreen. There is a machine in the arcade room called not Whack-A-Mole, because that's copyrighted. I think he's called Bat-A-Mole. So that's a very, very vague reference to Morse, but that is as far as it gets. Okay. I'm sorry, guys.
Thank you. And Dark Bat asks, will POPGOES Arcade ever have trading cards? Is that something you've thought about?
Well, POPGOES Evergreen has trading cards. There's these virtual collectible cards in Evergreen that they're still being worked on, because the artwork for those cards are phenomenal. The backgrounds are made by my girlfriend Sean, and then the characters are made by Ellie, or Stupid Butterfly. Really, really cool, and we're working very hard on those. There's 50 of them in Evergreen. I think we've shown off maybe 5 of them. However, in Arcade, no trading cards. There's no collectibles outside of the game itself. Like you can't. I guess you can collect trophies which appear in your bedroom now, but trading cards, no. I think that's a bit overkill. 50 are already in Evergreen. I think that's enough.
Okay. Jacob asks, besides the FNAF influences and the Fanverse, what external influences have inspired you with these games, if anything?
Well, he says, or he or she says these games, which I would encompass the other games we've attempted, like for example, Chef Wanted. Chef Wanted wasn't a POPGOES or FNAF or Candy's game, but it was a FNAF game, and we came very close to. We came about halfway to finishing that game. I would say for Arcade, I actually haven't played many RPGs. I did design the RPG elements of this game, the gameplay and the story and stuff, but I haven't actually played many RPGs, let alone games at all. But the games that have influenced me most for this game in particular would be FNAF World, I suppose, the original Arcade that we made, Undertale. There is a an element of the original 2020 release where you have to basically be a pacifist in a way, which is unique in our game, but is somewhat of a reference to Undertale. Inscription is another game. I loved Inscription. It has a few influences in this game. I would say maybe other games that I have played in the past, like Team Fortress 2. I would absolutely say that the random crit element in this game and the overkill element, which is in The Machinist, are inspired by certain things in Team Fortress 2, which is a game that Emil and I love. We play that game. We've played that game for ages, and it had a very small effect, but an effect nonetheless on Arcade. With Evergreen, I don't know. It really is just another attempt at the game we made in 2016, which was influenced by FNAF. Other fan games like Candies was also a massive influence for us. But that's pretty much it. I think I've covered it. I think I've covered all the obvious ones. Emil, because you can also consider Candies as well.
Yeah, I don't know.
Good answer.
My system has deleted the name, apologies, but they asked, what are you most excited about in the Fanverse outside of your own work?
So I just want to. I think I may have misinterpreted a previous question. Someone's just let me know. Someone asked if there were any trading cards in this game. Yes. I think they meant on Steam.
They didn't specify.
Okay. Well, if they are talking about that, just in case, because the Steam does make much more sense than having trading cards within the game. Trading cards and badges and profile backgrounds and those kind of additions to Steam games, we found kind of like late in development that those aren't available on games on launch unless you are like EA or Ubisoft or something.
Sure.
So we actually need to reach a certain threshold of, I think, either downloads or revenue or something like that before we can enable those.
Okay.
That being said, we have actually made every single asset required. We have prepared. We're hopeful that we do reach that threshold, and if or when we do, we are ready for it. We've made trading card textures. We've made badges. We've made profile backgrounds, emojis, that kind of thing. So if we ever do get to that point, yes, we will do it. And we've spoken to Kizguri Chris, who is up for it too. So yeah, if we ever get to that point, yes, we will have trading cards. I'm sorry for saying no previously.
Cool. Thank you for clarifying. Okay, so I've recovered the name. Ophia asked, what are you most excited about in the Fanverse outside of your own work?
Oh, okay. So other Fanverse games that are confirmed are, well, we have Candies and POPGOES, which are ours, and then there's the Flumpties games, which have already kind of done the latest Flumpties game is already out, and then it was released on mobile. Flumpties 3 was really good. I really loved that game. And then the ones that are yet to release are The Joy of Creation, Ignited Collection from Nixon, and then Five Nights at Freddy's Plus by Phil or Fiznom. I'm most involved out of those two with FNAF Plus. Phil and I have been close contacts for ages. He actually programmed the original POPGOES game. So to see him also involved in the Fanverse is really good. Is really exciting. I love what he's done with the FNAF series, and that game FNAF Plus to me looks really good. I've had a bit more of a look than the public, and what I've seen is amazing. I really hope it does release this year and that people love it, because to me it seems like a really perfect reboot reimagining of FNAF 1. So for me, it's FNAF Plus. Emil, what about you?
Same. Yeah,
same.
FNAF Plus definitely looks super interesting. Yeah,
cool. And he's shown a bit, quite a bit of it. We haven't seen much, if anything, I think, of the joy of creation yet, because I know Nixon's been really busy. But what we've seen of FNAF Plus, I mean, the community reaction has already been amazing, and breaking and entering, which is the video,
definitely
the show. My goodness,
yes,
breaking and entering was like probably
its own TV show on Adult Swim or something. It's amazing.
That was probably like the best, or for me, I think it's the best FNAF themed, especially in terms of horror, short film I think I've ever seen on YouTube. So yeah, really, really proud of him. Really happy with what he's made, and I'm excited to see FNAF Plus whenever it releases.
Cool. So, is there anything you'd like to talk about that I've not asked yet? Anything you'd like to say, share?
Oh, I suppose we are wrapping up. Well, I can say that tomorrow we are planning on giving Dorco's Games on YouTube a demo of POPGOES and the Machinist, which will encompass sort of the first third of the expansion. That seems like a lot, but it's actually not that much of the content, because I'd say a lot of what makes the Machinist so special is the secrets, the big reveals, and he's not going to have access to that. So for the most part, he's going to just be showing off the new gameplay, the characters and the enemies and the mechanics. So if that goes well, if we do, if we're confident with that demo we've made, I'll give it to Dorco and he'll play it during his charity live stream tomorrow for the Trevor project. He has confirmed on Twitter it's 24 hours long, so I don't know when he'll play it, but there is that. So that's another sort of reveal for.
You'll just have to watch the entire thing.
Yep.
Yeah, you're gonna have to tune in, donate, support him and his stream. He's a great friend of ours, and he's a big fan of POPGOES. It's great.
It's obviously a charity thing for a good cause, so yeah.
Of course. Definitely. So yeah, I mean, we're going to have to push that, even if we had nothing to do with POPGOES. By all means, watch that stream and support it. So we have that tomorrow. We also do have something to show off. So Simon, if you want to get that ready, we have worked on a brand new teaser / poster celebrating, announcing, revealing something for POPGOES and the Machinist. So it's on screen. There you go. I will have to upload that to Twitter as well. This is a poster that Sean, my girlfriend, worked on really quickly, but she did it exactly how I wanted it. I love how it looks. It's got every culprit essentially for who the Machinist may be. Who knows? Maybe they're on this picture, maybe they're not. But you know, there you go. And I'd love to see this at some point, maybe sold as like a poster or something. I love how it looks. So that's what we have to show off today. I didn't have anything to show off in the Machinist gameplay itself. I didn't want to spoil anything, because we had already planned to give Dorco a bit of gameplay tomorrow. But you guys do see POPGOES is wearing a blue waistcoat. Actually, you're not seeing the screen now, but you saw that POPGOES is wearing a blue waistcoat and blue eyes. That's obviously something exclusive to the Steam version. But yeah, we are working hard. We really hope to get this game out by early July. Best case scenario is July 1st, because it's a Friday. But we don't know for sure. We're aiming. We're doing our best. But in terms of anything else to show or say, no, I think we're done. I think that's a good amount of questions. Some good questions there. Some stuff I don't think we've answered before. So yeah, and thank you, Clickteam. Thank you, Simon, for hosting this. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.